Hello everyone, my name is Joan and I am the storyteller here on Charismatoac for our Werewolf the Apocalypse 20th Anniversary Edition campaign called A Song at Tara. My players have suggested to me that I make some videos where I run through the different NPCs involved in the campaign, for the reason that quite a lot of you listening into this might not actually know who they are. The reason for this is twofold. First and foremost, when a lot of you listen to this, because it's not exactly a graphics heavy game, we are all assuming that you're listening to it more than you're all on that you won't be able to read it. So if you happen to be one of these people who do not know all of the NPCs just yet, I'm going to run through them one at a time. In doing so, I'm going to simply read out the flavor text for these characters, and it's important for me to explain something here because, for example, when we start out with the werewolves, one of the first, or the first, I'm going to read out is going to be R.E. Ross OSullivan, also known as Runs with Stag. And his flavor text starts out with who he was and what his duties were when he was still the leader of the Sept in Dublin. I've then added several edits to the end of it, and I'm going to read out the whole thing, including the information which is now outdated, because in each case it might say something about who the character is, about their personality and how they're being seen by their peers or even by their enemies. So I'm going to start out with Ross, as I mentioned. His deed name is Runs with Stag. It's this fellow, and as my players would say when they saw the image the first time, the beard is mighty. So yeah, I'm going to start here, and as I said, I'm going to start with who he was in Dublin. Ross OSullivan is the Taoiseach of the Raven's Eye Sept in Dublin. That means he's the war chief, and he's good at it. He's an elder Gaillard and one of the most accomplished Guru in all of Ireland. Rumour has it that he's next in line to be R.E., which would make him the High King of all the Fianna. If this is the case, he doesn't let it show. He's an incredible singer, a fine poet, a great warrior, a good man, and an outstanding and inspirational leader. He is, in fact, almost too good to be true. Except he is true. A lot of the Fianna's hopes for the future ride on his shoulders. He is not without opposition, though. The local Get Fenris are not numerous, but they refuse to bow before him. They acknowledge his rule for the time being, but they do not agree with it, nor do they believe he is the best suited. In their world, the Raven's Eye Sept was founded by the Get Fenris and should remain on their hands. As far as they are concerned, Ross should piss off and take care of Tara where he belongs. Ross hasn't dignified that notion with an answer yet. Most people believe that when he eventually does, blood will flow. A lot of it. Obviously, this is who he was. Then I've added the edit that follows. On Friday the 17th of July 2015, Ross became R.E. of the Fianna, not only in Ireland, but worldwide. His brother, Lorcan's disappearance left him, as the Taoiseach, in the position of having to defend the most important sept under Fianna control. He has immediately called upon reinforcement from his tribe elsewhere in Ireland and indeed around the world to bolster his numbers and to strengthen the defences of the cairn. As of yet, these have not arrived. On his command, only Shiva and Una Haze are left in the Raven's Eye Sept. Shiva because of Raven's dire prophecy, which spoke of horrors befalling everyone and everything if the pubs were not to stay within my eye, as the wording went, and Una because Ross felt it was too great a risk to leave anyone who had been associated with the cairn in place after the disappearance of everyone else. Not knowing how Una managed to avoid vanishing, he felt it safest to send her elsewhere. Ross chose to hand over the Raven's Eye Sept to Cat Markison rather than to his heir apparent Siobhan. While Siobhan initially looked angry and disappointed at this, Ross immediately clarified that she was still his heir apparent, now not to lead the Sept in Dublin, but to lead the Fianna all over the world should he die or vanish like his brother. His last act as Sept Alpha of the Raven's Eye Sept, albeit with the approval of Cat Markison, was to send the pups on their rite of passage, commanding them to find the killers of Aud O'Brien, Michael O'Shea, Nicholas Jones and Trisha McBride and make them pay. Next up we have Siobhan Blood in Fur O'Leary. Siobhan is one of the angriest Gaillards in Eastern Ireland and certainly one of the angriest Garou in Dublin. She's also one of the most intelligent. It's a bad combination since it means she gets tasked with jobs she doesn't want and she doesn't have the patience for. Tea kettle, this one. Nuclear bomb on a timer even. She's the highest ranked Gaillard in Dublin apart from Ross at Athro rank, and she's widely considered his logical successor. Her only real weakness is her anger. It's also one of her greatest strengths. Siobhan would be a war leader. In this day and age, a war leader may not be a bad idea. But the extent to which she would polarize the Garou of Dublin would be a serious problem. And then, after the events that took place at Tara, I've added the following edit. Siobhan's leadership ambitions were put on hold and yet elevated to a higher level on the night of Friday the 17th of July 2015 when Aud O'Brien, Michael O'Shea, Trisha McBride and Nicholas Jones were murdered under mysterious circumstances. While that happened, the Sept based at Tara vanished, all 40 or so Garou all at once, including R.E. Lorcan. When Ross assumed the title of R.E. following this unbelievable tragedy, he did not pass the Raven's Eye Sept to Siobhan as had been the plan, but to Cat Markison. Siobhan was greatly angered by this for all of 5 seconds before Ross told her that she was next in line to succeed him, only this time not as Alpha of a single Sept, but as Banneran of the entire Fianna tribe all over the world. That said, Siobhan is not keen on the Geta Fenris having claimed the Sept in Dublin, and her enmity towards Cat Markison has not diminished, nor is it particularly likely to. Next up, we have Gorman Breckenridge, known as Last in Line. Gorman is one of the spookiest Garou in the city of Dublin. He's too thin, too lanky, too creepy, and he's got blackened eyes all in blackened eyes in all conditions. In the 21st century, where eyeball tattoos are a thing, he's learned to get around the social problems this creates in normal everyday life by going overboard on piercings and tattoos in general, and he's now a fixture and stable in the alternative night scene of Dublin. He's also an Aroon, and therefore he's extremely dangerous. He's got plenty of rage to go around, and despite his lanky looks, he's uncomfortably strong. He once broke the neck of a black spiral dancer by taking the creature in a headlock and squeezing, and he wasn't in Krynos form when he did so, only in Glabro. That said, the local Fianna treat him badly. Like all Metis, he's considered inherently corrupted by the tribe, and he resents this. Even more so because he sees how the only other Fianna Metis in Dublin, Liffey, is treated at least marginally better than him. It's done nothing to help him control his rage. As a result, he's probably the one Garou in the Sept who would like to see Liffey dead and scattered to the 4 corners of the world. He's not the most pleasant of fellows, but he's constantly looking for ways to prove to the rest of the Sept that he should be treated less like an outcast and more like everyone else. The fact that he's unlikely to ever rise above the rank of Clea is a source of a slow-burning hatred that could cause him to lash out at any time and at anyone. He gets along well with the Bone Norse by and large. They know what it feels like to look different and be an outcast as a result. I have not added an edit to Gorman just yet. He's a background character mostly, so it's not something that I've needed, but obviously Gorman is now also located in Tara. Next up we have Rock of Rock of Glendalough, or Rock as he's often referred to by his friends, is a rarity. There are not many Lupus Garou left in Ireland in general, and certainly not in the Dublin area, though there are a number of wolf kinfolk. Rock is a quiet, unobtrusive, dutiful, and likeable Clea. He doesn't have much experience yet, but he's deeply attuned to the wild, and many spirits take to him very easily. He's a fine warrior, but his inexperience shows, and he generally seems most at ease conversing with the spirits and exploring the Umbra. He's young, but many of the other Garou in the Sept are trying to set him up with a few nice female wolves from the Sioux. So far, Rock doesn't seem to be too interested. I haven't added an edit to him either. I probably should. First and foremost, of course, he's now also a Tara, like all of the ones in the first part of this. But moreover, he helped train the player characters in how to use their lupus and hispo forms most effectively. And he's formed a friendship with several of them who seem to like him because he is quiet and unobtrusive and doesn't make too much of a fuss of everything. Next up, we have John McDermott, also known as Drinks Like Fish. John McDermott is not so much a prankster as the guy everyone wants to hang out with and have a pint with. He's only Clea, and he has been for a number of years, but he's never shown much interest in advancement anyway. What he does for the Sept, and what he's really, really good at, is being the guy who will put his arm around the shoulder of someone really, really angry and take them out for a pint, make them calm down, then make them relax, then make them laugh, and then make them not kill someone. He's really good at it too, possibly because of his ridiculous resistance to alcohol. And I haven't added an edit to him. It should probably be pointed out that one of the reasons why he's got an absolutely ridiculous resistance to alcohol is that the Fina make alcohol that can get even Garou drunk. And John is resistant even to that stuff. So yeah, he will drink like a fish. Next up, we have Patrick Hannigan, known as Fist and Liver. Patrick is everything everyone not Irish thinks the Irish are. At least if one goes by stereotypes. He's large, he's squarely built, he's strong, he's obnoxious and loud, he's rowdy, and he loves a good fight. Oh, and drink. He loves his drink, particularly Guinness. He's best buddies with John McDermott as a result. He's a Rune, and he's made it to Foster in rank, but is unlikely to advance further. He's not terribly bright, and tends to land himself in a lot of difficult situations as a result, and because this means others have to bail him out, he keeps losing renown as fast as he earns it. However, so long as the situation calls for physical violence, he'll be jumping in his seat to be allowed to take part. He is not an unpleasant sort, but he doesn't pull his punches, verbally or physically, and this earned him his name when he literally planted his fist inside the liver of a man he got into a fight with. Needless to say, the unfortunate bloke in question did not survive the experience, and Patrick got in very real trouble for that. He was sentenced to 12 years in jail for the murder, but he managed to elude the Garda. They are still looking for him. For the record, Patrick tends to take umbrage with being called Paddy. It gets him angry. Really angry. He might even start cracking his knuckles. Possibly even growl. At that point, anyone who isn't bigger and stronger than him is well advised to run. And the lack of an edit is starting to get a little embarrassing here, but Patrick, of course, is now one of the frontline fighters at Tara, where he helps protect the Sept in trying times when under attack by the forces of the Worm. Next up, we have Bart McClellan, known as Whiskey Breath. Bart McClellan is a friendly enough sort, though his set name is well earned. He's a good lore keeper, keenly interested in Irish and Garou history, and he's got a storyteller's heart. For a Fine Gaillard, he's not much of a singer, but he tries, bless him. He's one of the friendlier Fina in Raven's Eye septs, usually choosing to deal with people on a case-by-case basis rather than by ancient and, his in opinion, harmful stereotypes. He's fostering by rank, but he's getting close to Adren. He's a better fighter than people tend to think due to his laid-back attitude, and he's always got at least a hip flask of Jameson somewhere about his person. Gotta be prepared. And, of course, as an edit, now he is a Tara as well. He has formed a friendship, particularly with Taryn, who has needed some guidance off camera during the 3 years or almost 3 years that she and the other characters were training. Barton was one of the people who reached out to her and helped her feel welcome and like she could be of use and be valued to the sept. And of course, she's very upset that he's no longer around in the immediate vicinity. And incidentally, the same goes for Siobhan, whom she's also very good friends with. Next up, we have Mary Ryan, known as the Morrigan. Mary Ryan is one of the harshest judges in the Raven's Eye sept. She does not believe in leniency, but she is fair. Her philosophy is simply to hand out the harshest sentence allowed when someone is guilty. If they are not, she will let them walk free. The guilty fear her, the innocent love her. She believes that her duty as a Philodox is unassailable and all-consuming. She believes in the worthiness of the litany, but she is aware that some of the rules have changed meaning over the years, and as opposed to the Red Talons, for example, she quietly accepts that. No one can accuse Mary of being a warm, cuddly woman, not even in their wildest dreams, but she is a thoroughly impressive one. Adren by rank, she may easily be elder one day. Few people outright like her, but everyone respects her, even the Get of Fenris, which she considers a mark of high praise, though she'd never admit it openly. And I have added an edit to her. As a result of having Shiva live with her for a prolonged period of time, Mary has softened slightly. She likes the young woman, and she has been genuinely concerned about Shiva's melancholy, but has lacked the ability and the insight to deal with it properly. Once Finds a Way involved himself in the situation, Mary was made aware that her approach had been completely wrong. She's taken it to heart, and she's decided to try over again with Shiva, hoping to establish a friendship from a new, fresh starting point. I should add to this edit that, of course, now that she is based at Tara, she's not in Dublin much, and as a result, she is barely at home in the apartment that she shares with Shiva. However, she trusts Shiva to take care of it while she's gone. And last but not least, we have Liffey Ahern, who's known as Can't Sing. And before I start with Liffey, I should probably say that while she has a lot of text, it's partly because I anticipated that my players would involve themselves with Liffey, and I was right. Furthermore, her backstory was an important hint to the players about how at least one part of the litany is dealt with in the in Guru society, and particularly in Guru society in Ireland. But I'd better get started. It isn't talked about, but Liffey is Metis. Most of the rest of the Guru of the Raven's Eye sept would love for this to not be the case, but unfortunately it is. Liffey is well liked, but tradition demands that her birth is held against her. But there is no finer musician in the sept than her. She plays 6 different instruments: the Celtic drum, the Celtic harp, the Irish flute, the Irish version of bagpipes, a great bronze horn using circular breathing to play, which is often used when a rite is performed, and an instrument not unlike the hammered dulcimer. She is exceptionally talented, perhaps the only Guru in the sept to have a greater raw musical talent than Ross, and yet she's still clear. It's unlikely that she'll ever rise above this rank due to the accident of her birth. Liffey is an extraordinarily beautiful woman, in every respect the model of what an idealized image of Irish women should be, except she's mute. She was born without vocal cords and beneath a gibbous moon to two Guru parents. The tragedy almost couldn't be greater. The fact that her mother died giving birth to her and her father was chased down and killed for the transgression only added to the awfulness of it all. She was allowed to live, but she's never been allowed to forget that her birth caused the death of two Fine who, until that point, were both well liked and well respected in the small Dolphin's Hope sept in County Antrim in Ulster, located at the Giant's Causeway. The sept is still there, but Liffey was banished when she came of age. No one could bear to be around her. She found her way to Dublin, where she was allowed to join the Ravenseye sept, although as a Metis she quietly accepted that she would always be on the bottom of the food chain. The local Fine treat her marginally better than they treat most Metis. The incredible sadness that always surrounds her, combined with the quiet dignity she carries herself with, makes it hard even for the most reactionary of the lot to actually be outright mean to her. The non-Fine members of the sept tend to treat her better, and she's on good terms with the children of Gaia in particular. She is one of the most selfless Guru in the entire sept, but her low rank and even lower status makes it difficult for her to make much of an impact, especially since her deformity does not allow her to speak up for herself. Literally. And as an edit, of course, she also moved to Tara with the rest of the Fine from the Ravenseye sept. She is, along with Gorman, unusual in the Tara sept in that they are both Metis, and normally Metis wouldn't have been allowed at that sept. It would have been the greatest and the best and the finest of the Fine who were based in that sept, seeing as it's the most holy place in the world to the Fine tribe, and they wouldn't, because of their very, very reactionary attitude towards Metis. They wouldn't have allowed Metis in, but needs must as the devil drives, and the situation basically called for unusual means. So she and Gorman are both there and are both taking part in the defense of Tara. Those are the Tara sept Guru, and they are of course being assisted in that defense by a fairly large number of Cithane or Fae. I'll get to them in a later video, but the Cithane are also willing to defend Tara on the basis that it is a holy site to them as well. And in fact, this is one of many reasons why the Fine and the Cithane have such a close working relationship, not just in Ireland, but everywhere. Next up, we have the Ravenseye sept, and the Ravenseye sept includes a number of kinfolk. This is because Cat Markison has demanded that they be made part of sept life, partly because of the low number of Guru that are available to defend the place. And while, of course, they are more Guru in the Ravenseye sept than they are at Tara, the number is still very low. I need to add here that according to World of Darkness lore, there is something like one vampire for every 100,000 inhabitants in the world, and even less Guru. I've never agreed with that personally, and consequently I've always used a house rule of there being considerably more both vampires and Guru and everything else than the official number would be. The reason for this is that while that number might work well in a major city like, let's say, New York, with about 10-15 million inhabitants, which would still leave a very large number of possible NPCs for any storyteller to use. But in a smaller city or in a smaller country like Ireland with 4.5 million inhabitants, it would leave space for very, very few supernatural creatures to exist. in this case, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Again, seeing as the Fina have their home in Ireland, there would be a very large number of them around the island, for example. But Ireland is also primarily a country with a large rural population, and it would mean that there would be something like maybe 20 Garou in all of Ireland if we went by the official numbers. This is why I've made that change. But anyway, on to the Raven's Eye set. And we start out with this fellow. His name is Ulf Bang, and he's a kinfolk. 8 years ago, Ulf left Denmark with his then 14-year-old daughter Pinilla in order to start afresh. The exact circumstances of why he chose to leave has never been fully explored, but it turned out to be a fortuitous turn of events. Raven informed Kat Markison that 2 young Gelafenris would arrive in Dublin shortly, and that one was connected to Ulf by blood, and that these 2 were important to the Raven's Eye set. Consequently, Ulf was the one sent to find Fenna. Ulf is a private man, somewhat of a stoic, and there's a lot of Gelafenris in him, even if he can't change. He's a powerfully built man who values his family, his health, and a strong arm, and he's one of the most dependable kinfolk associated with the Raven's Eye set. He's the brother of Fenna's mother, but he doesn't speak of his family in Denmark unless someone brings them up, and even then, he doesn't seem entirely comfortable with it. And then we have his daughter, Pinilla Bang. Pinilla is Fenna's cousin from Denmark who moved to Dublin at age 15 together with her father Ulf. She recently received her badge as part of the Garda, which she joined in order to do her part in doing good and keeping the peace, perhaps spurred on by being on the sideline as a young cousin had to become one of Gaia's warriors. Pinilla denies being envious, but the way she's been working out for years puts the rest of her class to shame. The Gelafenris lineage is probably to blame for that. If you can't tell the familial bonds to Fenna by the looks, you might be able to tell by the humor. Often sarcastic and occasionally dark, the closer you get to her, the harsher the jokes tend to get. Fortunately, she has an off button. And I should add at this point that Pinilla, in order to be a member of the Garda police force, has exchanged her Danish citizenship for an Irish one. And next up we have Fina Roach, who's also a kinfolk. Terran's girlfriend Fina is a young Irish woman with a lively disposition, though she does have a tendency to flap a bit if she's caught off guard. She's got no contact with the rest of her family, who don't approve of her lifestyle choice, a peculiar kind of asshattery Fina refuses to give credence to. She works at the Dragon, tending the bar 3 times a week. And it should be added here that the lifestyle choice mentioned is, of course, the fact that Fina is lesbian. She's in a relationship with Terran. And I have put lifestyle choice in quotation marks because personally I do not believe that it's a lifestyle choice, so please do not hold that against me. It is a matter of simply it's a matter of using the expression that Fina's family would use to illustrate a point. And now we get to the Garou of the set, and we start with Katrine Kat Markison, now known as Cross's Dark Waters and originally known as Throat Splitter. Kat Markison is one of the most powerful Thurges, or Gidja as the Gelafenris call female crescent moons, in Ireland, and the Fina hate her for it. Only a handful of spirit speakers in the entire country equal her in rank, and none of them are half as abrasive as her. Even as Gelafenris go, she's spiteful, angry, and willing to put her fists where your mouth is. She's a card-carrying member of the Valkyria of Freya, which explains how she reached her extremely exalted rank, and she's easily the best diviner among the Garou of Dublin by a country mile. The problem is that the Fina would probably prefer an outbreak of bubonic plague to ravage downtown Dublin before they dealt with her. She's on tense term with her fellow Get of Fenris, Eric Holmgren, at least on the surface of it. But what most people fail to see is that their constant rows and enraged bickering is that neither of them have actually tried tearing the other one's head off yet. The jury is out on who would win. Eric is clearly stronger, and he's an Arun, or Modi as the Get call them, but Cat is an elder and therefore not only far higher ranked than him, and therefore a beast in her own right. She's also got the spirits on her side. Rumour has it that Raven and Fenris both favour her. She's certainly been visited by Raven more than any other Thurge in Dublin at least, a fact which is driving the Fianna up the walls with rage and frustration. Cat Markison is a very, very dangerous woman. Very few Guru in Dublin trust her. Her attitude towards the lot of them is one of barely repressed disgust as a result. But she's also the clearest and most immediate opposition to OSullivan. She doesn't have much support, but people fear her, and rightly so. As far as she's concerned, this is very nearly as good. Now, obviously, all of this is what Cat was like when the campaign started, and I've added an edit here, which is significant at the end of it, because Cat obviously has changed quite dramatically over the course of the over 3 years that the campaign has run in character. Cat's support was considerably greater than most had anticipated when, on the night of Friday the 17th of July 2015, an explosion of anger erupted in the Raven's Eye set. Months, even years of frustration boiled over for Eric Holmgren, who got into a loud and very physical altercation with several Fianna. Others took his side, and the number of Fianna involved grew as well. The argument was over Cat's leadership abilities, and it was only broken up when Una Haze arrived, yipping and taunting every Guru in the sept into chasing her instead of ripping each other's throats out. Una's actions might have seemed suicidal, but the spirit of the cairn were with her, and she survived the long chase to Tara, where the horrible fact was revealed that the place stood undefended and unguarded. Every Guru present was gone, and all the spirits had fled and gone into hiding. With the pubs informing the set that Aude O'Brien, Michael O'Shea, Nicholas Jones and Tricia McBride had been killed that same night, Cat challenged Ross to do the right thing for once in your miserable life. And moments later he assumed the mantle of Ari and took it upon himself to defend Tara with what few Fianna he had in the Raven's Eye set. Cat was named his successor inside Dublin. The Get of Fenris rejoiced, as did their supporters, while others, like the Silverfangs and Bone Nors, are apprehensive, to put it mildly. Cat, however, set immediately out to work. The pups were given their task for the rite of passage, and she has decided to defend the sept in Dublin against all comers with what Guru is left with her. On top of that, she has mellowed somewhat over the 3 years, probably because she got more support from other Guru as that period of time passed. She's still Get a Fenris, and she still has a short temper, and she can still get extremely violent if the need arises, but it's not quite so bad as it was when the campaign began. Next up, we have Nori Mazandarani, also known as Friend of Sand. Nori is a recent arrival in Dublin. He's Iranian, but he has lived in Egypt most of his adult life. Being Guru in a country run almost entirely by vampires isn't easy to begin with, but shit blew up in his face, literally, after he tried to stop a terrorist attack backed by a covert Pentex subdivision. Fortunately, taking a bomb blast to the face at 10 paces wasn't enough to kill Nori, and he managed to drag himself out of there. But having foiled the plot, he drew the ire of every local Pentex operative. He would almost certainly have died if he hadn't escaped to Ireland on the recommendation of a long-time friend, Kathleen, a Fianna Philodox, who had connections with the Sept and Tara. Seeing as Nori is a Fostern, Silent Strider Gaillard, he doesn't belong in the Tara Sept, but as a Homid and a man who's travelled extensively, he had no trouble fitting into Dublin, except for a few personal oddities, but everyone's got those. And as an addendum to that, I should probably say that his personal oddities include his extreme love of his shisha pipe. He smokes a water pipe at pretty much any opportunity he gets, and even occasionally when he doesn't have that opportunity. And next up we have Zhenya. Zhenya Delgo, also known as Tears Your Eyes Out. Zhenya is a Homet Get of Fenris. She's Fostern and she's Philodox, though she refuses to answer to that version of the title. She answers to the title of Forseti in the Get of Fenris tradition. Being Get of Fenris, she's got rage issues. Very few Get can claim to be fully in control of their own anger, but Zhenya's rage burns ice cold rather than red hot. She becomes laser-like in her focus when she gets angry, and woe betide the poor shit who faces her judgment then. This woman makes the Morrigan look like Mary Poppins by comparison. She's got extremely strong opinions about various issues, and she is willing to put her money and her fists and claws where her mouth is. Consequently, she's been in a number of fights since arriving. In fact, she got into a fight on the very first night she was in the city. There is no question that she's capable, but the local Fina dislike her intensely already. I should add as an edit here that Zhenya has been made the Master of Challenges for the Raven's ASAT. Next up, we have a rather strange person who is a very recent arrival to the set. This is Winda McAlpin. She doesn't have a deed name or even a pup name just yet. Winda is an enigmatic individual indeed. The Guru of Dublin only know of her through circumspect means. The unquiet dead whisper of her in reverence and awe for the most part, and abject dread for the rest. She speaks a strange language, they say, one which they understand but should not be able to fathom. They say she seems desperate to find a man by the name of Kenneth. They also whisper that no one really knows where she stays or when she appears. She's a gentle soul, apparently, but terrified of something or perhaps someone. Even Darky Kelly, indisputably the most terrifying and feared ghost in Dublin, seems to protect Winda. The only thing every wraith agrees upon is that Winda doesn't know what she's saying when she talks to them in her strange tongue. The words they say are not her own. The Guru of Dublin are told to at least keep an eye out for her, but that she does not appear to be a threat, especially since the ghosts seem to have rallied around her. And, of course, the edit here should be that Winda has been found and that it's turned out that she was a black spiral dancer. She isn't anymore. She spent many years, centuries, being cleansed in the waters of Erebus. Erebus is a deep umbral realm. It's also known as the Silver River. And any guru that goes into the Silver River will have any and all sin burned out of them, the exception being that metas aren't made non-metas by jumping into the river. That, unfortunately for them, sticks. The problem, of course, is that it's known as the Silver River for a reason. It is literally a river of silver, but it doesn't kill Guru. It just hurts just as bad as silver would anyway. But it keeps them alive indefinitely so long as they're in the river. And they're then allowed to leave the river when they are sin-free. It took centuries for Winda to be sin-free because, well, association with her clan, who chose to betray an entire country and go into the service of the worm. Well, that sort of thing takes a good long while to have expunged. However, Erebus also means that once you get out of it, you no longer have a tribe and you no longer have a rank. You start over as a cub and you have to be accepted into another tribe. That hasn't quite happened for Winda yet. She hasn't found a tribe to join yet, but that is undoubtedly going to be part of the story going forward. Next up, we have Mikhail Kulikov, known as Winter Dancer. Mikhail is Homid, he's Clea, and he's a Silver Fang Ragabash. He's also an exceedingly nice guy. As opposed to the only other Silverfang in Dublin, Dimitri, Mikhail is genuinely charismatic, friendly, helpful and outgoing sort of guy. He's not particularly dangerous in a fight, but he's very stealthy, and he's good at making everyone relax around him. He's from Kiev, meaning he's not actually Russian, but Ukrainian, and he doesn't mix too well with Dmitri for that reason. He's still young, he's still new in the city, but he's good with technology, at least as far as the Silverfang goes, and he's always good for a laugh, a party, or a helping hand. I should add, as an addendum here, that Mikhail was recently pummeled into unconsciousness by a vampire, which is not exactly a thing most most Guru would be terribly happy admitting. But when I get to the vampire in question in a later video, I will mention it. Next up, we have Dmitry Alexandrovich, known as Klaus of Ivory. And this was written before Mikhail arrived. Dmitry is the only Silverfang in Dublin. He's Philodox, he's clear, and he's very young. He's also insanely unpopular. No doubt, no one is in any doubt that his particular problem is that he suffers from severe delusions of grandeur, and he simply does not grasp the concept that everyone isn't automatically following him, elevating him to the rank of elder, if not legend, simply because he is who he is, and his manners reflect this. He pays lip service to any rule that means he has to show respect or deference to anyone else, but he has so far managed to avoid getting an actual thrashing on this account, by being a moderately better actor than the Get of Fenris in Dublin, who openly show their distaste for the local Fina, even when they are called upon to show their respects at moots or in similar situations. Nonetheless, no one likes Dmitry much, which he genuinely doesn't seem to understand. As fantastic and awe-inspiring as he is, everyone should, as a bare minimum, defer to his ruling in each and every case brought before any Philodox in Dublin. Better still, everyone simply ought to acknowledge his general greatness. The fact that he spends so much time in the Sept at night is driving the Fina in particular to tear their hair out in frustration. Most of them want him to piss off, and the sooner the better. But so far, Dmitry has shown no interest in leaving. And as an addendum here, he may still believe that he's the best thing since sliced bread, but at least he's been shaken up recently by the events of the final hours of the rite of passage that the pubs underwent. He is consequently, he's been able to, at least for a short while, put his selfishness, which it really boils down to, and his delusions of grandeur on halt and on pause. And he's hopefully for the rest of them he's learned a lesson, but of course, seeing as this is a Silverfang derangement, he's unlikely to remember that lesson forever. Next up we have Althea Manolis, also known as Sing Sturgis. Althea is a foster in Gaillard, and she's got a worse reputation than she deserves. She got on Siobhan's bad side not long after arriving in Dublin, and the acrimony has never been dealt with. What exactly happened, no one but the two of them know of, but rumours persist that Althea felt more than a passing attraction to the slightly younger Fina, and, as is not terribly uncommon with the Black Furies, made a pass at her. Unfortunately, Siobhan is straight as an arrow and took this the wrong way. Angrily reiterating the litany's ban on Guru mating with Guru, she instantly gained the support of every other Fina in Dublin. Althea, for her part, made the argument that there was no mating going on since there was no chance of Metz's offspring. Result, an unhealed breach which started mainly because Althea thought Siobhan was beautiful and told her so in a suggestive way. That said, Althea is still a Black Fury, and she's been raised in their traditions. She doesn't handle men very well. She definitely doesn't handle men who think they can boss her around very well. However, she's a decent person apart from that, with an interesting repertoire of songs from the Mediterranean to share. And I've added a couple of edits to this. First one is that Althea lost half of her arm with a silver bullet meant for Dimitri's head. which struck her instead after she pushed him irritably during a conversation. And the second edit is that she's been made the Master of the Howl for the Raven's ASAT. Next up, we have Cesare Lupe, also known as Salt in Wounds. Cesare is a brooding, if handsome, Romanian. He speaks little, which is seen as odd since he's a Gaillard, but he's still quite young and only holds the rank of Clea. He's not very well liked by anyone in Dublin, and he's only very rarely seen around the Sept, though he does attend moots and rites when and where it is required of him. Other than that, he tries to stay clear of the rest of the local Garou. Rumour has it that he has his fingers deep in the Romanian and Bulgarian mob activities in Dublin, and that he doesn't care much for the rest of the Garou one way or another. However, no one has had enough dealings with him to ascertain whether this is true one way or the other. What is known, however, is that he has a definite sadistic streak. Those people who have crossed him in some way tend to end up in excruciating amounts of pain, but alive and awake to feel it. Apparently, torture is one of his favourite things in life. Charming fellow. I've added an edit here. Cesare has reached the rank of foster, and over the course of time it's taken for the pups to be trained. While he rarely shows his face at the cairn, he has nonetheless been credited with enough actions against the worm to be able to elevate himself. His actions have been mainly underhanded, and he's often achieved his victory through deliberate and careful use of the gangs and mobsters who answer to him. But how he goes about it is less important than the fact that he has done it. What swung the vote in his favour was the destruction of a Pentex-controlled water cleaning facility which pumped all the toxic waste it filtered out of the water directly into the Liffey. Should also add here that, of course, Cesare is currently in the doghouse, if you'll pardon the pun, in the set, because he admittedly unknowingly, allied himself with an agent of the worm by being in the service of Aaron's father. And doing his bidding in harassing Aaron. Cesare legitimately did not know that the Elder Blackwell was a traitor, but that doesn't change the fact that he gone messed up. Next up, we have this one. Francesca Eleonora Amara, also known as Smiles at Gaia. By common consensus, Francesca is the most attractive werewolf in Dublin. By common consensus among the males of the Sept, particularly when none of the females hear it, is that she's probably the most attractive werewolf anywhere in the world. By not so common consensus, she's probably got more than a little fey blood in her. No one says that aloud, though, well, almost no one. At least not when the Cithane are actually around to hear it. Most of the time, in any case. Apart from being Italian by birth, Francesca is Fostern by rank and a Thurge by auspice. Her rank is recent, her promotion is not that far in the past, as she was one of the most recent group of pubs to pass their rite of passage. She's pretty useless in a fight, at least as werewolves go, but she can stop a bar fight by blowing a kiss to the people involved, and she has a laughter which has been compared to the sound of crystal bells ringing. Not to mention that she's incredibly likeable. The agents of the worm really hate her. And I've added an edit here saying Francesca has been promoted to the Master of Rites of the Raven's ASAT following the disaster at Tara. While she is only Fostern, and while there are many rites she still doesn't know, she's nonetheless the best qualified Garou left in the Sept. The position is close to overwhelming her, and she clearly does not feel worthy or ready for it, but she understands that she needs to step up to the plate and own the situation, and she's absolutely trying her damnedest. And I want to add to that of course Francesca, or Francie as she's known to a lot of her friends, is also an exceptionally skilled healer, and being a child of Gaia, which is what she is, she doesn't, not only isn't she very good in a fight, but she doesn't like to fight. She thinks that most problems, if not all problems, should be solved by diplomacy and talking your way out of the issue. Next up we have Joseph Cheniavsky, also known as Snickering Sneaker. The oft maligned, oft chased, oft shouted at, Oft ranted at, constantly grinning, and widely loved snickering Sneaker is the preeminent ragabash in the Raven's Eye set. Joseph came to Ireland with the mass Polish immigration when the economy was booming, working on the great countrywide infrastructure projects that led so many Poles coming to Ireland. That Dublin became the 5th largest city in Poland, in quotation mark, as some Irishmen called it, for a few years. He's got enough wit for a whole sept, and he's not afraid to spread it around. This means that he often gets in trouble with the less than patient, rage-heavy people in the sept, but while they want to beat him up, few of them would actually want to hurt him. The jury is still out on whether the Get of Fenris would want to tear his head off and spit down the gullet for the tricks he plays on them, or buy him a beer for the ones he plays on the Fianna, or on the Fina. Sorry, it's an old habit. The Fina either want to play rugby with him as the ball for all the pranks he's subjected them to over the years, but they also want to build him a statue for all the times he's made the Get of Fenris look like idiots. And everyone else don't know whether to weep, groan, or laugh their asses off at this man. Most of all, this Athro Bone Nor is a fundamentally respected member of the sept, a likeable man and a good soul. Just don't tell his arch nemesis, Siobhan O'Leary. And I've added a couple of edits. First, that he makes his home at Houston Station in a disused train. And secondly, that Joseph has been made the sept beta by Kat, and he has accepted the position, although he is wary of the responsibility and clearly doubts whether he will be accepted in the position by others. He has made a sort of tentative peace with the Get of Fenris, as this illustrates. That being said, he's also a friend of particularly of Terran, but not he's not on bad terms with any of the PCs. Some of them have more to do with him than others, obviously, but he has taken on the mantle of an extra father figure to Terran, and has helped her extensively coming to terms with her being Guru. Next up, we have Matthew Sinclair, known as Can't Be Bothered. Matthew is a minor celebrity in Dublin. He sits around on O'Connell Bridge most days, watching people come and go with a paper cup, asking for a few cents from the people passing by. This isn't unusual. Sadly, there are many homeless people in Dublin these days. What makes him special is that he always keeps his dog and his rabbit with him, and this has made him easily recognizable. He takes good care of both animals, and they are deeply devoted to him. What has made him famous was a situation where 3 young, drunk punks grabbed his rabbit one day and threw it over the side of O'Connell Bridge and down into the Liffey below. The poor creature would certainly have drowned, but Matthew resolutely jumped into the water and saved his furry friend, before being helped up by kindly passerbys, who also detained the 3 young men who had done this terrible thing. They were all given short prison sentences for animal cruelty, and Matthew, much to his chagrin, became famous overnight. While that fame is waning little by little, people still smile at him when they walk past. At least it means he's never short of food for his dog and his rabbit. The reason, however, for why he's sitting on O'Connell Bridge is simple. He knows the spirit of the Liffey quite well, and some gurus speculate that this is why the rabbit survived the drop into the water, not to mention the fact that the river is now mildly toxic and the bunny should at least have gotten sick. More than that, Dublin North and Dublin South occasionally try to fight it out in the Umbra right there on O'Connell Bridge. Matthew has been able to talk them out of it a few times, not every time, but at least now and again. He's clear mostly because he has no interest whatsoever in advancing in rank. I want to add as an addendum here that the photo of this man, though not the name, and in fact also the story of the rabbit being thrown into the River Liffey, is in fact a true story. It happened while I myself lived in Dublin, and the man in the picture is in fact the person sitting in or on O'Connell Bridge most days. I was a little surprised to find this picture of him on the internet and immediately decided to include him as an NPC. Second to last, we have Una Haze, known as Bleeding Paws. Una Haze is a smallish, waifish kind of girl who never seemed at ease fighting, but who knows more brilliant cusses and swear words in both English and Irish than probably any other living being in Dublin. How such a thoroughly filthy mouth came to fit on such a young woman is anyone's guess, but she seems incapable of saying 2 words without 3 of them being obscenities. She's also a very, very fast runner, which is undeniably a good thing when you're a lowly Clea and a ragabash on top of things. Her actions led to the discovery of the disaster at Tara, and it earned Una her first rank. And last but certainly not least, we have Theodora Nikas, also known as Strikes from Hiding. Strikes from Hiding is the most physically dangerous ragabash in Dublin. She's ranked Adren. She's not exactly a young wolf anymore, and she's angry. Very, very, very angry. Far more so than her fellow New Moons. No one really knows how a lupus from Greece managed to get to Ireland, but she sauntered into Dublin one day in Homid form and made herself known to the Raven's Eye Sept. She's been there ever since, and she's been hunting ever since. The local kindred live in absolute blood-curdling terror of her. No one really knows what's made her so determined to eradicate the leeches, and any attempt at getting her to talk about it has led to curled back lips, snapping jaws, raised hackles, and, well, more snapping jaws. She has a grudge against the vampires. It's clearly got something to do with Dublin, and she isn't telling anyone what it is. The number of vampires that have fallen prey to her wasp talons, a gift that shouldn't be available to her at Adren rank, which means that she's probably been demoted at some point, but woe betide the poor shit who asks her if this is the case, are numerous. Mostly she kills fledglings, but this has turned into a surprisingly effective strategy since it makes the local bloodsuckers largely unable to replenish their numbers, and occasionally someone stronger falls either to Theodora's claws or to some other calamity. While she isn't off killing the vampire population in Dublin, she is managing to keep it pretty much at a steady level, which is an impressive feat in its own right. And I've added an edit here. Despite being Ragabash instead of a rune, Theodora has been made Wormfoe for the Raven's Eye Sept. She's generally considered one of the finest warriors remaining in the Sept, perhaps with the exception of Eric Holmgren, and due to his recent severe injury, that position fell to her. Which reminds me, for some reason, I leapfrogged poor Eric. Let's take him. Eric Holmgren, also known as Foehammer. Eric Holmgren is the most violent man in the Raven's Eye Sept, and he himself considers that his best quality. He spends so many nights in the Garda's holding cells that the general joke is that he doesn't need a flat of his own. The Garda have a warm bed and a warm meal ready for him whenever he feels like crashing. He puts people in hospitals more often than not, but somehow he always walks free. The local Fina hate this man. He's tolerated, but only barely. He's considered the single most dangerous member of the Sept, but he is impossible to spare. He's only Fostern in rank, but he would be much, much higher if his constant and flagrant social issues wouldn't cost him renown as often as his violent exploits can earn them back. Eric doesn't give a shit. He beats people up. He doesn't covet rank and fame. Just a lot of blood and a lot of death. For someone of such relatively low rank, the sheer amount of mayhem he can unleash is absolutely staggering. Gaia preserve the Guru of Dublin if he ever does attain higher rank and the gifts that go with it. And I've added an edit here. During the last stages of the rite of passage for the Fates at 6, Eric engaged a large group of heavily armed Fomori sent by Alistair MacAlpin to stop them. His actions, along with those of Cat Markison, brought the Cubs time to continue to the Hotel The Marker, where they confronted the villainous Black Spiral Dancer. Unfortunately, this heroism came at great personal cost to Eric, who received a severe head wound, which has left him with a fairly severe case of amnesia. He also seems to be a little less sharp in his reactions. It has not otherwise impacted his ability to fight, but given his confusion, Cat has made him cairn water to avoid him prowling the streets of Dublin, where he might end up in a disastrous, violent situation, given his nature, and which might lead to unwarranted deaths of innocent civilians. those are the guru involved in this campaign. I'm going to make more videos like this one, going through the rest of them for those who are interested. If you had any use for this, and I don't know, perhaps have been able to take some inspiration for NPCs of your own from this, by all means feel free to leave a comment below. But as usual, I will ask you to be nice about it. Thank you very much.